My name is Hanis. I'm president of Genocide Intervention Network and Save Darfur Coalition. On November 1st, both organizations that have been the leading organizations in the anti-genocide movement decided to come together formally as one organization, and we're working on rebranding so that there will be one name as opposed to both hyphenated names in several more months. And the reason for that was there was a conversation amongst the different advocacy groups in the anti-genocide movement about what is the long-term vision of the most impactful way to influence change. And after we had those conversations, there was a lot of overlap and a lot of agreement on mission, vision, theory of change, programs, tactics, strategies. So it seems that if we were agreeing on all those things, on going multi-conflict and prevention on mass atrocities, why don't we bring together all the efficiencies, avoid any of the redundancies, and put more of the resources in actual programs to get bigger impact? Well, my hope is that we can use our example of merging Genocide Intervention Network and Save Darfur as a platform for more actors in the citizen sector and social entrepreneurship to think about it, because I think the model is often about this creative destruction, and you've got to build your own entity, and we get stuck in these silos. And so the conversation, the paradigm, what I think should be is about impacts and results. We're all in this to change, create social change, for all of us to be, everyone a change maker. And I think that the key, if that's the goal, then we shouldn't confuse the means to doing that. And oftentimes the means are create an organization, start out with seed funding, work your way up, get mezzanine funding, build staff. It's very focused on whether that's social entrepreneurs creating their own, as opposed to who else is doing something out there, and can you make it better than what they're doing? Or if you're not the best one out there, can you find someone else to sort of match your strengths? So about reinforcing strengths, compensating for weaknesses, and that paradigm is not used often in the social sector. It's obviously not new to see two entities come together under one roof. Mm-hmm. And I think what's important is that merger sometimes gets oversimplified as it's all or nothing. You're either one organization, or you've got, or you're two separate organizations. And there's lots of strategic partnership options in between that. So you can share office space, you can share communications or development or administrative staff, and still have different programmatic, different brands, different donors, different boards. So I think that's something that's important for the citizen sector to look at when considering strategic partnerships that may include a merger. But I think a big difference in the citizen sector versus the for-profit sector is there's not a lot of buying people out. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times you're able to use money to compensate board members to leave or to join. Same thing with staff, which is possible. People do get severance packages, for example. But I don't think a lot of nonprofits buy out other organizations as easily as you find in the for-profit sector. Mm-hmm. And that creates a lot of tension sometimes when money isn't the driving factor, which for most organizations in the citizen sector it isn't. Right. It's about the mission, it's about the passion, the vision. And so that oftentimes might be an inhibiting factor because the personalities, sometimes there can only be one executive director or one president, and both are very committed and passionate about it. And they don't want to be bought out because money isn't one of the driving factors. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what prohibits a lot of people to consider this, which in our case is a lot of the planets aligned to make this work out. But I think it really comes down to personalities, and what I think a lot of this was personalities that are already working, that were just, we were able to work really well at the board level, at the staff level, with our stakeholders. So I think that was partially unique that we've seen our sector, when we hear about other sectors, being much more collaborative. Even when we weren't even considering mergers, we would meet on a regular basis, from the executive staff to program staff, always coordinating. We're going to send out this message, constantly doing collaborative press releases. So I think there was a culture of collaboration way before, which created a more fertile ground for merger to be a very likely option. But I also think with technology, and there's a lot more young people getting involved, that has effects on both a cultural level, that there's a lot more, it might be seen as just more a horizontal plane and getting things done, a lot more collaborative culture from the get-go. But I think that because we also are younger and earlier in our careers and earlier in our lives, is that there isn't a lot of risk. So we don't have mortgages, we don't have kids, or other big financial things that might inhibit some other entity, whether in our sector or in other sectors, from considering that, which is, again, like sort of that difference in the for-profit sector where people are being able to be bought out or get a really decent severance package where it can mitigate that risk, so you can have that conversation a lot easier. I guess one of the main points I would say is, at least on the merger side, people often see that as a conclusion because both or one of the organizations came from a position of weakness. And this wasn't the case at all from either organization. This was just an evolution of saying, how can we have a bigger impact? This is where I think is really important for people in the citizen sector to think about how can they maximize. It's not just how do we raise more money, how do we partner better, or I would say it's not just how do we raise money, but how do we partner better. That might include merging, and that some of those compromises, they might not be the president. I'm coming from a position of privilege of saying that, and I understand that, but if they're really into this for the mission of creating change, then they should do this and not have to wait till a recession hits or for them to lose a big donor or any other shock, a negative shock to the system. They should aggressively consider strategic partnerships that might include a merger, but it might include, again, short of that, as something that can really help them get a bigger impact.